Kosjem felt her stomach turn. Such a huge change to her life on a whim. Negotiating her child's life away. She stepped out of the restaurant before anything was delivered to the table. Banquette did not follow her. She sat on the steps of the restaurant and cried. She could never have imagined herself betraying him like that. Uisten Zatadui, the best man she could have ever known. She knew, though, deep inside, that she was not really betraying him. He was gone. He would have wanted her to move on. He would have wanted her to find someone she could love like him. That was not going to happen, she knew. This is probably the next best thing. Just then, Dintar met her. Listen, I know this is a bad situation, I really do. Let me tell you something, though. I know the way people often think. You're not betraying your boyfriend. He is gone. There's no one left to betray. Your obligation to him's cut off. I know you'd rather try to find someone like that to love again, but life takes our fantasies away all the time. Kosjem narrowed her eyes. You may grow to be nearly as close to this man as you were to him. It's possible it could even be stronger if you get to know each other long enough. It's also possible you'll never properly click. That's just it, though. Marriage isn't about feelings as much as people make it out to be. It's about making a commitment to someone. You made a commitment to your boyfriend because you felt good things for him. You can do the same for this man because of the feelings you'll feel for this child. That way of thinking is so... Mtehite, I know. Or at least the way they used to be. I think there's some merit to it, though. Have you ever had that kind of relationship? Yes. I'm in a greater family, remember? Our relationships are rarely based on feelings. Gever is a clan name? Kosjem said. What are your lesser families? They mostly died out. My brother took a lesser family name, though, Dintar said, then smacked himself in the face. What was your brother's name? Dintar took a deep breath. He turned away from her and opened his mouth, but did not say anything. Just say it! Kosjem almost shouted. She felt her stomach drop again. He wouldn't be hiding it unless... Zatadui, he said. Kosjem stepped back. Your nephew was... Yes, that's why I searched you out. He's his uncle. He knew about me. He's his uncle. This child is his great-nephew or niece? At the very least, this should make it less scary than if I just searched out a stranger because their boyfriend died, right? To be honest, I'd push that out of my mind. This just brings it up fresh. So really, it's your nephew's heir you care about, or maybe your heir. Think it may be too late for that. I was actually an alum to see Uisten. I'd fallen out with his father, my older brother, and a man stepped out of the restaurant. He looked like one of the cooks. Chipax, what the hell are they thinking cutting the water off like that? A few seconds later, they'd noticed that people all over the street had walked outside and were quietly complaining about something. Your water out too? The cook shouted. Yeah, strangest thing, I was washing clothes when the water just sputters and dies. This is the King City. We shouldn't have to put up with things like that, a woman shouted out. Give it a minute, it'll be back on, Kosjem said, not wanting to deal with something so petty when she had some big things to think about. One of Kosjem's workers ran into the street and shouted, It's the spearhead, the sapphire spearhead. They've used it on us. I know they have. There is no damn spearhead. The spearheads are just superstitions. Grigora has a lot of resources. He doesn't have magic wands. Gagax caught up with him and said, What's going on here? Is everyone meeting outside for a reason? Oh, the water's just down on the street, Kosjem said. Is that all? I've lost water a lot through my years. It'll probably be fixed in a bit. It's not going to be fixed. It's a sapphire spearhead. Grigora cut off our water supply. That's when Banquette came out into the street, too. Is this the guy? Would you mind telling me what's going on? The water was shut off on the street. I'm sure it'll be fixed by tomorrow. It was him, Kosjem's worker said and pointed at Gagax. He was with me the entire time, except when he was eating at a restaurant. When would he have had time or means to cut off our water supply? If he has a sapphire spearhead, he wouldn't have to do anything but speak. You speak to get it to do what you want. There are no spearheads, Talge. Spearheads is in the 5 spearheads or the Diamond Spearhead? not you two.
They're real. It's verifiable history.
History like Jirogego, you mean?
No.
Let's just head over to the showcase district. There should be restaurants there with running water. A crowd of 30 people wandered into the showcase district, and as they did, they began to notice more and more people out on the streets. Many were complaining, while others looked scared. "Grigora used the sapphire spearhead," one of the people in the crowd said. "Shut up." That was when they heard gunfire. "It's far away, but—" "The station! There were Grigora Hite soldiers here." "Is your water working?" one of the crowd asked. Everyone in the crowd said no. "I'm getting reports from all over Keigos. Water is off all over the island," a man said. "I'm going to check on something. Please be careful. I'll meet with you later," Banquet said. They ran as a crowd to the station. Many of them, including Dintar, stopped short, unable to run any longer, but Gagax and Kosjem made it to the station. There was a scream of anguish from one of the men, and then some of the women screamed. There were about a dozen people lying dead at the station. "No, this can't," Kosjem said.
"Ah, hell! I gotta get out of here, Kosjem. I'll be killed where I stand,"
Gagax whispered to her. Right. Oh, of course. And Dintar?"
"I think Dintar is a Keigos loyalist. He may be fine. He's got that Alam accent. They'll give him a chance. Me? I'll be murdered as soon as they hear me speak."
"I'll hide you in my apartment until this blows over."
"This isn't going to blow over, and you know it. We've been building to war for a long time. It's finally come. It was just a matter of time. I was just dumb enough to choose now to come over here."
"Then I'll hide you until I can smuggle you out. I'm still a businesswoman. I'm not a very influential one, but I depend on those ships for trade." Dintar ran up behind them. He hunched over, coughing. Oh. He noticed the bodies.
Let's go back to Kosjem's shop,"
Gagax whispered to Dintar. "And hope that no one noticed us in all this chaos." As they walked back, Kosjem wondered aloud. How were they able to turn off the water for the whole island?
"I know the answer to that, but you don't believe me. Thing is, this happened in Grigorahex too. Back when the first split happened between Grigora and Keigos. Keigos got control of the Mirage and moved it around to Chordek. He killed the Elder Brokti at the western pumps in retribution for his support of Grigora, and shut off the water physically for the entire western region. It didn't take long for the Elite to regain control of the... What the hell are the Elite? I apparently saw one. A Furanka Elite. What are they? Gagax shook his head. The Elite are, well... Kosjem was getting tired of this. Elite. There are Elite. There are people called Elite. A lot of people don't notice them, and the ones who know about them shut their mouths when they start talking. Gagax frowned. I know about the Elite, but they're not the important part of this story.
Kosjem huffed. War, Kosjem, remember? Dintar said. I have to agree with Gagax. We have more important things to think about. I'm not sure about Keigos attacking like that, though. Especially getting control of the Mirage. The Mirage is like a mechanical god. There's no way one person could get control over it. It takes a team of about 50 engineers to run it.
Well, it happened. There are actual scars in the ground where the Mirage moved past Chordek, and there were a few thousand people that died when the water was shut down. He gained control of the Mirage with the Diamond Spearhead. Isn't the reason it takes 50 people to run it because it's really complicated? It's not because of actual power, it's just a lot of parts to consider all at the same time, Kosjem said. If we don't die in the next month or so, and we can go back, I'm definitely going to show you the proof. You can see it for yourself. So Grigorahex had its water shut down. This is something the kings can do to each other, Kosjem said. Her face tightened. I don't like Grigora, of course, but this is just innocent people being punished for a couple of little boys fighting each other. Did you just call King Keigos a little boy? All men are little boys at some point or another. Most don't command armies and agents. They arrived at the shop. The chaos outside had not subsided. The fact was, there could be more soldiers coming. Was this a full-scale invasion? Kosjem tried to push that thought out of her mind, but remembered Elen Vatmama's family house. She closed the curtains and turned off the lights. Kosjem led the two men to the spare bedroom. There's only one bed.
I don't have guests that often, so it wasn't really important that I had a very nice room here. This is fine, Kosjem, Dintar said. I can share the bed with our mutual friend here.
I can also sleep on the floor. I'm a pilot. I spend a lot of my time sleeping on the floor, Gagak said.
I'll try to find you a blanket.
Thanks. Listen. Lock the doors. Not just for us, for you. People can do terrible things when they're scared, and they generally don't think straight.
Of course. Kosjem knew that already. She could not believe this was happening already. She was going to have to face a hardship that she had never imagined, and her child would be born in the middle of that. War. War would mean lots of death. She lived in the capital, so there was always a threat that if anything happened, it would focus around her town. Grigora was smart, making his capital as far from Keigos as possible, but to be fair, Solheim was made under a united colony. She tried to sleep, but could never sleep more than a few minutes at a time. She woke to every noise and change in light as clouds moved in front of and away from the stars. And a crash. She rushed next door and found Gagak struggling with a man, while Dintar was lying unconscious beside the bed. The man stabbed Gagax about 5 times before Kosjem tackled him to the ground, holding his arm as tight as she could away from herself.
Grigora Hite Spy, you even look like Grigora!
She bit his hand hard. The tip of her upper left canine tooth broke off in his skin. He shouted out. She punched him in the face over and over again, eventually grabbing his hair and using it to pound his head over and over again into the ground. She knocked him out at some point, so she stood and kicked him in the head over and over. She finally calmed enough to bend over Gagax and inspect his wounds. He was bleeding out too quickly. The man had pierced his heart and lungs with a knife. She cried out, scanning the room for anything that could bring the promise of help, but there was nothing there. She grabbed a sheet off the bed and tried to wrap him. Dintar finally came to and stumbled to her side. Oh no. He covered his mouth and his eyes teared up. She was panting. She sucked her teeth and cried, "No." Her voice wavered. She grabbed her face. There was another person who meant so much to her. Another person taken from her, and she did not even know why. She collapsed to the ground. We need to find a doctor. The hospital's on the other side of the palace, closer to the center of the target. Then we need to move now. Dintar raced downstairs. Kosjem tried to lift Gagax off the ground. It was useless. He weighed a significant amount more than she did, and a lot of it was muscle. Dintar came back into the room. There was a car running tonight. It's going to be more money, but I got him out in front waiting for us. Help me! Kosjem shouted at Dintar. Of course, Dintar said. He lifted Gagax's shoulders, and Kosjem lifted his legs. Even with the two of them, they struggled to move him. The driver wandered inside and saw what was happening. He rushed to help them carry him. He held up the middle, and Gagax gave out a shout of pain. They got him to the car.
I've only got room for one more.
Kosjem looked at Dintar. I don't have the money to pay for him.
Here,
Dintar said. He handed her a bag of coins. Don't worry, he whispered. I made the exchange when we got here. Kosjem watched Dintar as the car sped away. He got smaller and smaller, and the reality of what was happening got bigger and bigger. They arrived at the hospital, and it was busy already. It was not likely futile attempts to care for the people at the station, so there must have been more chaos that night. They brought a gurney out and brought him inside. Kosjem tried to follow them inside, but she was held back. Please, just wait out here. We'll do what we can, but you will get in our way. He can't. Let us do our jobs. She waited for the next half an hour. She saw one of the nurses walking slowly toward her. His head was down, and he pulled off his gloves and deposited them in a bin. She did not need him to speak. She already knew he was gone. She knew it from the moment she saw the wounds at the apartment. She stumbled over to a drinking fountain before she remembered. Of course, it would not work again for a while. I'm sorry. I'm afraid, she cut him off. I know. He's gone. The nurse just looked at her. She glanced back at him and started to walk back toward the front door. Please be careful. There could be more of them out there. It took her a second to realize what he had actually said. She did not want to draw any more attention to herself or to her other guest, So she said, "Yeah, I will." She almost walked out the door, but turned back to the operating room. She ran inside and got down beside him. "You crazy old man. You're dead and it's all my fault. If I hadn't tried to act like everything was fine and had you followed us here, you'd still be alive now and—" Of course, her business. She had not had reason to think about that in the chaos. But first with the war and then Gagax's death, she had no way of fulfilling her orders in Gogora. People had been walking in and out of the lobby the entire time she was there, but one face in particular stood out as he walked in just as she began to gather herself to leave. Banquet. She began, but she shuddered. "I don't think this is the best time." "I heard what happened from that man from Elam." "My workers, they won't have anything left." "I got a lot of money in my last fight. I can pay your workers wages. A severance for them as they find new options." "There are no new options for them." "Well, there will have to be, because this is not an option anymore. You will not be going to Gogora any longer." Again, he was right, and she hated him for it. "The showcase will be even more important than before if we go to war." "What are you talking about?" "People will need distractions, especially children. This reality is too much for them. If you want to write stories or perform on stage or both, you could be a great distraction for the children. You could be a great asset, and you would be taken care of." Kosjem calmed herself and thought. She had lost everything in such a short time. This was the only out she had. It was not an attractive one, but it would do the job, or at least as much as could be hoped. Her workers were going to be devastated, but at least this could soften the blow, and he was right. She would need help to take care of her child. "All right, I'll do it. I'll marry you. You promise to take care as much as you can with my workers." "Well, I imagine there will be more positions open in the military." She definitely did not want to think about that, but pushed it to the side. "Fine, it's a deal." She took her crest and handed it to him. She would be part of Rati's clan now. She would rather stay Taldui clan, but at least she would no longer have a connection to Gogora. "I can set up the ceremony for 1 week from now. That means the line grafting, the oath, and the consummation. As they were unable to get back to Gogora, they performed the funeral for Gagax before the wedding. The tears had already stopped for Kosjem. The only other person who would have known him even a little was Dintar, who was now stuck in Keigos territory, and with a potential target on his back. He at least knew how to carry himself like a resident of Salheim. He stayed quiet and blended in rather well. Kosjem felt as though her life had completely ended, and in many ways it had. There was a feeling like a permanent hunger inside her, but she knew this was normal. She still had not completely gotten over it for Ruishten, and now she had no time to recover. Kosjem and Banquet were married 1 week after the final agreement, just as Banquet had said. They had their line grafting and their oaths spoken before a house of authority. Ratis, as Gogora was not likely in the circumstances. And the night of the consummation, where they were observed by living family members and someone high up in the clan. It was always uncomfortable for any new couple, but it was far worse when she knew the entire thing was just for show, as she had no interest in Banquet. The next day the news hit all of Keigos Hex, starting with Salheim, that the war had begun. The military would be invading Kakutek. It had, after all, only been a matter of time. And that is the end of part 1. The story will pick up again in September. In the meantime, I'll be finishing the preliminary work on the next book, so please keep a lookout for that. And if you haven't already, check out Diamond Spearhead, available on Amazon now. In the coming weeks, keep an eye out for a parody Pimsleur lesson for the Vinkan language.